Hey everyone, welcome back to City Slickers. My name's Phyllis20 and I'm joined here with Skip. Skip, how are you?
Hey guys, hey, $2. Well, I'm doing fine. Ready for another chat, another week of chatting.
Another week, which I don't know how long you think this is going to go for, but it's not going to go for a week.
Another week when we do a chat.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, that's probably about true. And we're not alone. Our special guest is Jay, aka Bisquicklehausen. How you going, man?
I'm doing pretty well, thanks. How about you?
Good, dude. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
No problem.
We've just been talking because it's been actually a real challenge to actually get the right time frame for all of us to sync up. So those of you at home, I'm in Sydney, Jay's in New York, Skip, he's all the way over in Romania, and it's just like getting that lined up is been like so tricky.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. So thanks for getting up at like 8 a.m. and recording this. It's like 10 p.m. for me, so it's kind of.
It's just. This is returning the favor for me scheduling the global build-off at like from 10 to 4 a.m. your time.
Oh my god!
So we're even now.
Oh yeah, exactly. I forgot about
man,
that.
That's giving me flashbacks. That was a all-nighter. I think that was absolutely insane. That was probably I reckon one of the better global build-offs with that formula. I know it wasn't perfect for like people like me who lived in, you know, time zones that didn't work with everybody else, but I don't know, something really nice about doing it live, getting it all done within that like one time frame.
Yeah,
cool.
It made it much more interesting and much more event-y, and I was a little surprised because like back when we first planned it, it was before kind of the city skylines, like I don't want to say first party, but like back before Paradox started doing a whole bunch of stuff with city skylines. Like that's what kind of kicked it all off. And back then, I literally remember talking, it's like, ha ha ha, you know, we'll never be able to get everybody in the same place. So a big group stream is like as close as we can do. And then, of course, we did get everybody, like, amazingly, we did get everybody in the same place. And, like, I was kind of surprised that they didn't want to try the same formula again. And I get that, like, an 8-hour stream is a hard thing to watch, but the idea is that like if you can be there, you get this 8-hour stream that you can watch, or 8-hour event, and it's, you know, really cool, and you can jump in and out if you want to, or you know, it creates a lot of extra material off the back end. And unfortunately for the first build off, basically it kicked off the kind of change in the way that City Skylines was promoted, and in that change, a bunch of the files and things and the video clips and the stuff we delivered for them to be able to post separately got lost and mixed up. Because I think they were probably waiting for the official channel to come out, and then it didn't have official channel branding, and then it got put on somebody's... Like, you know, it just ended up as this sort of mess. But the idea was, like, remember those interviews we did with both of you guys, and we had, like, all these little short videos, and the idea would be, like, there's this big 8-hour stream, and there's a bunch of small stuff that you'd be able to watch. You'd be able to watch kind of a cut-together highlights thing that would be, you know, 20 minutes long. You'd be able to watch showcases of each city from the end. You'd be able to watch, you know, each of the interviews and whatever. And unfortunately, none of that stuff came out, which was a bit of a bummer. But it made for this, like, incredible event that I think, like, I still remember just sitting there and watching the chat come in and seeing everybody's name who I recognized. Like, it was the entire community. It was amazing.
Yeah. And there's something really nice about doing it live as well, you know, which I think, you know, the last two global build-offs have been really great, lots of fun, really enjoyed the builds, like obviously way more chilled because people can just do it at their own time, but I don't know, for me, like personally being part of that build-off and knowing that I've got like a certain amount of time to pull it off and people are checking in on me every now and again, and everyone else is building at the same time. It was exciting. It was really cool. It'd be great if they could somehow pull something off like that again. We're talking like 3 years ago. Do you want to tell the audience just a little bit about how that sort of came to be?
Oh man. So the first global build off was the new ones are basically, I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about this actually. But the new ones, you get given like a week or so to build, and you just go in and out, you record your own thing, and then you post a finished video. And basically you get finished videos, everybody compares your finished videos, and you go, wow, okay, cool. The first one we did, I have a background, or at the time really had a pretty extensive background in esports graphics. I worked on the graphics team for the Call of Duty World League for a while. I was literally the guy going to the events and was there putting up and taking down the graphics and like trying to fix them and make sure that the brackets and all the sports graphics and sports style stuff was set up for these big esports tournaments. And I literally started thinking like, City Skylines is probably the least traditional like esporty game, but could we do a big production like this? Because it was amazing, you know, sitting there with the chat open and seeing all these viewers, and like it was a big event and people would like come and sit and watch live and would, you know, and like it got me thinking. So we did some experiments with big massive streams, and Flux, Strict, and I went and with a lot of help from Paradox, who's interested in trying like bigger City Skylines event streams, we did the FBS finale stream as kind of a secret test run for how a big stream, including like pre-recorded parts, including giveaways, including all this extra kind of content, webcams and things, and trying to be like, you know, it's not just a normal, hey, I'm bored this afternoon, let's stream, or like I stream for 4 hours a week. We wanted to try and do like a big event with a lot of promotion, like custom graphics, and try to really make stuff shine. And then we kind of took that to the next level for the FBS finale. From the FBS finale, and then we went and took that and wrote up a document and be like, here's what we learned, here's what we want to do. Would you guys be interested? And they were, which was awesome. So we ended up, we thought we were just going to do it like everybody at home, and they're just like, we really want you to do this from our office in Stockholm. I'm like, can't say no to that. So they ended up bringing, it ended up being me, Strict Toaster, and FlexTrans all in Stockholm, and we got Maddie, Leader of the Monkeys, out as well. From she lives nearby, so it was an easy little train ride for her. But
wasn't quite
really
as
great.
exciting to go and visit Stockholm for Maddie.
Not quite as exciting for her. It was my first time having been up there, and it was just incredible.
First time in Europe?
No, sorry.
So Skip, you go, man.
Not my first time in Europe. I've been to Italy a couple years before. I'd been to London a long time previously. I have family who lives in London, so I ended up in Europe. It kind of like, usually not London. In fact, I went back in October, and that was my first time having like spent considerable time there in years. But
Yeah.
What's going on?
it's my office has a big window, and the sun just disappeared.
Oh, I thought like the lighting had changed or
And
something.
natural light.
Yeah, natural lighting had
But
changed.
I've been to Germany, to Italy, kind of, you know, your standard like tourist locations from America. So
Nice.
it was cool, like getting to go to Stockholm. Like, you know, I say that it wasn't my first time in Europe, so it was not like enormous culture shock. But man, I just loved it. I thought it was such a nice place. It was so comfortable, and I've desperately been trying to figure out a way to get back.
I totally feel what you mean. Stockholm is absolutely amazing. I've seen lots of European cities and so on, but Stockholm got something different probably. And I spent some really cool period of time there, even though it was a short one. I even had a walk by myself there. I remember when I've been to, I've been this year actually, in February I think, or January, I don't know. I've been there, the weather was also good, so it was a nice walk by myself, because I was the first one who got there in Stockholm. We got there, 4 of us, me, Los Gecko, Titan, and Sim Nation. Okay. And I was the first one to get there, and I had like 3 or 4 hours until the next person would arrive. And I said, okay, what can I do? I'll take a walk. And I saw the old part of the city. Pretty cool city. Really.
Yeah. I got there slightly before the others as well, but unfortunately I had just come off of like an 8-hour overnight flight, and the other two had come off of even longer overnight flights, so I sat in the hotel lobby and desperately tried not to fall asleep.
Yeah, I think that's the worst part when you come from a very far distance. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
even $2 when you came to Berlin.
Yeah,
was
there's no short distance trip unless we're going to New Zealand. But even like I flew from Perth to Sydney, like opposite ends of Australia, and that was like 6 hours or something. It was ridiculous. And they've only got like 2 flights that go, and there's one at like a normal time, which is really expensive, and then there's one at like a midnight time, and you think, I'll just sleep at that time, it'll be fine. But then there's a time zone difference that really messes you up. Like it's one of those flights that just totally messes you up, and it's just not okay to do. So yeah, there's no short flight distance for me, unfortunately. Jay, when we're talking to City Walk, we're laughing at like the types of comments you get when you release videos about airports, and when you're doing videos on like sci-fi and stuff, and people are calling you out on that. And I was saying that, many years ago in Springwood times, you created those planes, and there were a whole bunch of planes from like the 80s era, pre-80s era. And to this day, I still get comments of people telling me what the names of the planes are. And
Oh my god.
I feel like they're always different. Like, people are always telling me different names for the planes that you build.
I get that a lot too. I get that in YouTube videos. I get that for FBS. I get things where it's not necessarily the type of planes. I get people who guess what airlines the fake ones are meant to be copying. And, it's fun, and, like, I don't want to be mean to people who are trying to, like, say stuff, and it's always fun to see what people guess. It's always nice to see that people get it right as well. But, like, it's like every other comment that someone is like, oh, man, Transcon is United Airlines. Like, CS Airlines is American Airlines. And it, like, alternates. It's, like, big chunks of text that are which airlines line up with which ones in real life, and why don't you make real life planes? And then another paragraph of people who are like, oh, here's what they all are in real life. And then, why don't you make them in real life? And that's the entire comment page on all my airplane uploads.
I've done what? Maybe like 2 airports, 3 airports. I feel like I've done heaps of airports now. I've done more than 2 or 3. And they're so brutal. Like, whenever you do those episodes. Because you just know that you're going to get a whole bunch of comments. Like, I remember when I used a whole bunch of these, like, boxes on the side, and they were just benches. And it was, like, pre any sort of assets that we had for airports. Mm-hmm. And I just used these benches, and so many people were telling me what these benches. But I mean, like, look, pretty much all the comments were very nice. But I just remember from this, I had, like, an image like this. And I was like, I don't know what these planes are. I have no idea what they are. And, man, I still get so many comments from people, just telling me exactly what planes are.
Oh, I know what they
right
are.
there.
I can tell you. Please.
They're right there.
Hey, what's that plane?
Of course, it's fun for me when people tell me what they are, as if, like, I don't already know, I guess, or, like, they weren't already in the workshop description, or...
It's like an accident.
I don't know.
It was an accident that you somehow made them look sort of similar to
yeah, exactly. It's
real
like
life planes.
It's really bizarre, but just by pure coincidence, this looks exactly like a 747. And it has the exact same dimensions. Like, weird. This is amazing. I think you should know that this, like, the jumbo jet looks exactly like the 747 jumbo jet.
You've got a Pan Air in there, right? Don't you?
I do have Pan Am in
memory?
there.
What was that, sorry? I thought there was a Pan Air in there.
I think it's called American Legacy.
Ah, right.
which is interesting. It's in there somewhere. I seem to remember it was one that, because you took all these screenshots for me. I'm like, hey, you've got the 80s airport. If I'm making these, I'm just going to totally punt and ask you for screenshots. And I think you missed a screenshot of the American Legacy one, but it's in the group shot, so... I think it's in the group shot. Maybe it's not.
There's all the boys. Oh man, so much fun. I really loved working with you on these airlines. I mean, I say that, but I mean, I didn't do anything besides plop them down.
This
It was fun. I hope someday you go back to do a Springwood Revisited.
if you load.
Or at least something else set in the 80s. That was always... It was a lot of fun. It's like... More recently, it's less common for me to want to do, like, special stuff for people's cities. Like, if you look at the airlines and the train names and things, like, they're pretty dated names now. I've got San Miniato Airlines. I've got Cedar Valley Railroad. But, like, for Springwood, I was always like, hell yeah, I'm absolutely going to jump in here and do a bunch of jets. And it was supposed to be easy. Like, the retro jet stuff was supposed to have been just this super easy reskin, but in doing it, I'm just like, oh crap, I made more modern looking, like the more modern variation. So I went back and remodeled almost all of these to get rid of winglets and to change engines out and change sizes of planes and dimensions to make them look like more accurate 80s things, and that was just a ton of fun. And like, if I had only done them as changed what the hell's the word? I can't remember. Like changed paint jobs. Like if I just like reskinned them to like an 80s scheme, it would not have turned out as well, I don't think.
Yeah, I did not expect you to go to these lengths when you created these for Springwood. I really just expected you to put a couple of... There it is. I thought you were just going to put some new skins on them, and then you actually went the whole...
Yeah, it ended up... Again, it's just one of those things where it was just... I had a little bit of spare time, and when I'm doing something that's a lot of fun like this, and it just comes together really quickly. Some assets and, like, finishing some assets are just a total slog, where, you know, things have to be... So, like, the expansion packs and the revamped planes are a lot of fun to make, but just like, man, it's hard to motivate. Because like, the original plane stuff was made one plane model all the way from nothing to in-game in one day a piece. I took 2 weeks over the summer once when I didn't have a job. I just said every single day I'm going to model, UV, texture, and game import however many planes for this style. And each one took 1 day. And they look really good, and they were incredibly good and incredibly well detailed at the time they were uploaded. Now they look like crap.
You're talking about these ones?
Those are though you're looking at the revamped ones. Those are the redo, which those ones take more than a week per plane. But if you look at international jets or jumbo jets, which are the ones I haven't managed to redo, even though I've been like slowly stepping and working away on this the revamp project for 2 years now. It's still saved in my computer. It's the 2018 revamp for this.
You're talking about these ones?
Yeah,
Rhinestone
you can see those.
Airlines. Oh my god.
These were great assets at the time, and they really fit into my strategy, and the one that was useful on the workshop back in 2016 of, like, we don't have a ton of assets, so I just tried to get a lot of variety out quickly in, like, a big matching set. Which is, like, that's what we wanted at the time, right? We were just trying to get assets made, and, like, I think nobody had made, like, an A380 or anything like that. These were some of the first ones of specific types on the workshop, and the fact that they came in big packs that were already like, if you're doing a small airport, just grab the regional jets. If you're doing a huge one, grab all of them. So that they were packed in nice formats. They were all of like matching qualities and matching airlines, and they looked, reasonably nice. now, obviously, we have so much more in the workshop. You really have to go the extra mile and make beautiful ones. So I'm now spending twice as much time modeling, or even more, and that's the fastest part. And then I'm doing ambient occlusion bakes to get like natural shadows on these, and much more texture detail. It used to just be like a big white rectangle, like great, fuselage is done. And now I'm going and finding more detailed plans and drawings and manuals from this, and trying to make sure that I get up close details correct and as much as I can, which has slowed down the process a fair bit.
My God, it's ridiculous. That is a ridiculous process. It must take so much time.
One of my favorite images, if you could pull it up. Actually, I think I could just sneak it in. It'll cover up my face, but this is what we were dealing with at the time. But like, this is what we were dealing with at the time, right? This was the vanilla games, and then this was mine. And that was a huge seismic upgrade. But now I look back at the one on the right, and I'm like, man, that looks not good.
Wait, hold on, what? So you're saying the one on the right you don't like anymore?
No, not anymore.
What?
It's the one on the right.
I love those differences. That is so funny.
Now I've got ones that look like this, with like much nicer weathering and nicer colors and more accurate and more specific detail. Like, you don't get this on those. So I look at those other ones, I'm like, man, those are so low detail garbage now in comparison. So it's tricky. These are much nicer assets than the old ones. And originally my plan was for FBS, I was going to try to redo them all, but I just was so busy doing my job, FBS, like all these crazy things. I was just trying to crank them out, and unfortunately I could not get enough done for the end of the series. But like, in the amount of time it's taken me since I first launched it, and you'll see people point it out here, this model of plane has been bought by a different company and renamed. Like, my original plans had a couple, like, most of the companies that operate the 747 here have now gotten rid of their fleet, like, have retired it, or especially right now with all this stuff going on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, right now it's not a good time for planes.
For planes, yeah, but like, you look at so many of these, there's like, yep, they're retired now, and I want to update, the United 747. Those haven't flown in 2-3 years, but I'm going to have a new version of it eventually.
A new old version.
Exactly. So it's like, it's going to be a weird, frozen in time sort of 2016 type of thing for these. Yeah. Planes were fun.
They still are. Man, so cool. So cool. So are you spending much time still reskinning and building these models on these planes?
Planes I haven't done a lot since last fall. So I kind of go back and forth between trying to do... Here, let me turn my camera back on. I go back and forth a lot trying to go between... assets for Presidio Bay and assets for the workshop. And of course, right now I'm trying to crunch for Presidio Bay because we're recording this just before it's released. So, yeah, and it's like, obviously in 1906, when we're starting Presidio Bay, not a lot of jets. So it like goes back and forth. And like currently my non-Presidio Bay project, and hopefully that this will date the recording in the fact that like everything came out and is great. I'm working on a revamp of some of the metros that I've done, some of the New York City subway stuff, just because, again, since those came out literally like synced up with the original release of Metro Overhaul Mod. So they are perhaps a little bit dated looking, and I'll pull up. So old ones on the top, new ones on the bottom. Hopefully you can tell. Yeah, these are getting a little nicer. Yeah. So it's like there's a lot to improve on in a lot of my older models.
Man, whenever I see assets on the workshop, I just go, okay, now I'm going to build a New York project, and then I'll like scroll to the next page of the workshop, and I'll be like, oh, okay, now I'm going to do one based in Dubai, and I'm going to do, you know, it's like, back in the day when you could just like build cities where you'd have like all the different types of assets from like all the way around the world, just like within the one place, like Springwood. When I did Springwood, it's so many different assets and buildings and vehicles from like all around the world, and that was totally fine for the time being. But these days, I reckon if I try to whip something out like that,
it's one of these things that it's you got to make them nicer, and like it's been the same with kind of making episodes. Like it used to be, I could make a Gramercy episode back in the day, and it would take 4 hours. I'd literally put a timer on my desk, and I'd say, all right, I'm recording 2 hours for the time lapse, and I'm getting done whenever I get done. And then when that timer goes off, I cut the time lapse, and then I record 20 minutes for a live build, or 10 minutes of like polishing up and finishing the project in like a 10-minute speed build thing for the live. Then I'm done. Could edit it. I recorded 2 of those a day back in the day where I was doing like episode 1 through 8. And then really things started to kind of change once the second generation of like series came out, and like I think Strict Toaster coming in with Sinu and being like, this is a real place and I'm trying to do it properly. And then man, it ended up with like FBS episodes took like 20-30 hours to record sometimes, between research and, for me, asset creation, and for them like scanning the workshop for a bunch of extra stuff they all needed. But like, it's the same here, where previously I just went and said, I know that's an air conditioner on the roof, let's make something that looks air conditioner-y, and it's fine. And then for this one, I went and found, like, had to scan and browse the internet for, like, probably as long as it took me to texture this one. I spent scanning to try and find better images of the roof so I could get it laid out more realistically. Which,
But, I mean, the results, you can see it. The result is just so much better. And so accurate as well. I mean, the fact that you've actually snagged a job working for the transport system in New York, just purely based on your assets that you're creating. I think
and that was based on these ones.
That was based on that crappy one up there.
Yeah, so this is what little lag. This is what this one has gotten me.
Have you detailed the bottom? Like what's going on the bottom?
This is the new model.
Yeah, but if you
underneath.
Yeah, look at that. You've even got stuff under there. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I used to, but again, like, it was just random stuff. I'm like, like a ladder looking thing here, and just like random repeated details. This I went and found, like, browsed through pictures. And I know I don't have to do this. In fact, I know I could probably just change the window color of this one and people would think it's fine. But there's one of these things where it's just, even if I were to do that, this now has separate submeshes so that we'll actually have headlights and taillights that look like this. There's a new trick as well where when it's in service, it'll have this and say the color.
Oh my God.
But with the prop version, says not in service hiding under there.
God.
So when you plop it normally...
Get out of here. That is ridiculous.
When you plop it normally, it'll be like off, basically. Like these are all the submeshes involved. So
Jay,
that's the prop version, that's the vehicle version where you've got lights and signs that are on. And we can do that now, and it's awesome, but man, it takes a long time.
far out.
It's stuff.
All these
like,
little details, man, they're so cool. Like, and you do know that people do appreciate it as well. I mean, there's a vast majority. There's a lot of people that probably don't even realize that lights turn off and on and things like that. But there's so many people out there that appreciate that sort of work.
Yeah, I hope so. I always know it's time to revamp stuff and update it when I stop seeing people using my stuff on the City Skyline subreddit. I'm like, okay. See, like, not a lot of people are posting X, Y, and Z, so it's time to redo it. But
what are you showing us?
These are, speaking of like submeshes and like more ambitious projects than ever. These have hopefully been released already as part of Presidio Bay. But I ended up doing a complete set, some of my first ever road vehicles and cars. But this is a complete part of, and the source for, a total replacement set for all vehicles in the game.
Oh my god.
For all road vehicles. So
how many do you have?
It was so far 40, and I'm just bringing in the last few this weekend.
Oh my god.
So it's tricky, and it's tricky might not be the right word for it, but like, thank God they only made these in black at the time. Otherwise, I'd have to do more for color variations. But you know, I never would have dreamed of this, and it would have been fine back in the day if I'm doing a 1900 series to be like, just cancel out, like, turn off all the game. But now there's the ability to do more and to set vehicles and to, I mean, we've had the ability to set vehicles for a long time, but there's just the ability to be able to do more. And with submeshes, it made it reasonably easy. So I get the entire set of 40 with like 3 versions of passenger cars and then 2 or 3 chassis. So I've got that's LODs. I've got just empty cab chassis, and then thanks to submeshes and things and these newer features that we have now, that's also an LOD. Damn, I'm totally mixed up with these. But
you won't be able to see people in them, will you?
No, unfortunately not. I could set up a person as a submesh, but
I remember Ronix did that for one of his vehicles.
Ronix has done some insane stuff. But like, I'm building off of his work. Luckily, most of the time we play the game, we see it from up here, so you can barely tell if there's a person. So it doesn't make sense to.
It's all angles.
To spend that much, but like, it ended up being really fun. And I've got here's the wrong chassis. So I've got 2 different like chassis for it, and I've got a whole bunch of different like beds and dump trucks and pickup trucks, and like this is what'll be the garbage truck basically, and like move food. It's just a dump truck that they just chuck stuff into. And of course now, like with all these new DLCs and things, I had to do like, we've got tanker trucks to be oil industry stuff, and we've got like, I had to make a version of this for the water pumping truck from natural disasters, and I have this big spreadsheet, and it's crazy how big the game has gotten in many ways.
By the way, have you found on the workshop so many assets, buildings to fit that period of time?
So buildings, luckily, for America, it's slightly slim. We're missing a lot of, like, if it didn't survive to today, we're probably missing it. But we've managed, and part of the reason we've been in pre-production for a year is we can make a lot of the stuff that we need, which rules. But also, we've had a Patreon going for more than a year now to help us get stuff commissioned. And we have some fantastic assets that we've made, this being one of them, which I recently updated to have more variants and versions. Ooh, it's not quite what I was looking for. They're in here somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're just looking, because you've been developing, it's got to be, over a year now that you've been working on Presidio Bay.
So it's been over a year since, like, we've gone public with it, I guess. So it's been over a year for that. It's been closer to 2 years of actually working on it, which has been crazy. And that's just because at the end of the day, like, we have a lot of assets from the era, but there's a lot of stuff that we still wanted, because part of the thing is that with Presidio Bay is that San Francisco is such a good kind of cross-section for a lot of urban development. So like this is, and a lot of them kind of still ring true, this is an electric-powered train car that they used in a place just north of San Francisco for 50 years, and it's a third rail electric thing. It ran like almost like a subway, and thousands of people had electric transport to the ferries across the bay to get to work. And then we were like, Presidio Bay is going to tell the story. Like, we had like environmental friendly urbanism and got rid of it, and are now trying to figure out how to put it back. Like, they've replaced the train on this. So this train ran for a long time. It stopped making money, and it was a private company, so it was abandoned. Public good, like, be damned. There's now a bus that's slower and worse, and has kind of encouraged like cars and parking and sprawl and
Dude,
whatever.
welcome to Sydney. Like, we had like the best tram system. Like, went across the tram went across the Harbour Bridge. It went all the way into Bondi. Went onto the northern beaches. It was extensive around Sydney. Tore it up, replaced it with buses, and now they're slowly bringing it back. And they're having the hardest time bringing back the light rail
convincing
because
people.
yeah, but it's like there's no space for it. So I mean, I think
the
it's just
funny
the
part with
case.
this, they abandoned the track, like the right of way where the tracks ran for a long time, and they just reactivated some of it as a diesel train. So in 100 years, we've gone from an electric train that ran directly to downtowns and had super easy, convenient changes to the ferry, to a more polluting diesel train that you have to walk like a quarter mile to get to the ferry, because the distance that used to be the old train yard is now the parking lot for the ferry because everybody else still drives. So they couldn't bring the train close back to the ferry dock, which is the same one they've been using.
Yeah, wonderful.
And that's just, it feels so stupid, but like, it's going to be really interesting. And by the time this is out, you've hopefully already seen these driving around and kind of enjoying. But like, there's so many parallels that we've seen, and starting with the big earthquake and fire is really interesting, because that was kind of a hard reset for the region and kind of where regionality started to happen, because people that were in San Francisco and had the fire were like, yikes, that sucks, let's go move to Oakland, let's move to these nearby cities and build them out. So we've had a really great and productive year, and it's felt strange to me because there's been almost nothing coming out on my channel, because everything's been behind the scenes with stuff we've had from people who are helping us out with commissions, and it's just been a fantastic amount of stuff that's all come out recently, if the series has come out by now.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking. I mean, Skib and I have no idea. We haven't even seen anything, so we're very interested to see what ends up coming out. And oh man, it's so exciting to think that over a year has been put into preparation just for this one series. It's gonna be great when we actually finally can see it.
It's
definitely.
exciting.
When I hear 1 year to work, it's like, oh my, for a series, it's like, wow. I mean, it's a lot. I never done, I think not even 1 month in advance a project or something. 1 year seems like a lot.
Yeah.
It's hard because I mean, you just want to release it as soon as possible.
Yeah. That's the feeling.
That's been the challenge for us as well, because we really want to release it. We want to get people to like see all this stuff happening and like get to know the series. But there's a lot of stuff that, and again, this kind of goes back to the fact that like it's a different game now. But there's a lot of stuff that we don't want to, and it's gonna be a little awkward with considering what you just said. But like, we don't want to just make another City Skyline series that was put together in a month.
Well, I mean, there's a whole production that's going behind this. Like there's a lot of asset creations, and I'm looking at this right now, and is this gonna be a train station? Because I could really use this train station.
Yes, actually, and I've been meaning to send you these for a sneak preview in Marble Mountain for probably about 6 months now.
I didn't need it in Marble Mountain. I needed it in the.
Also doing some other fun stuff. This was a one-day project, mostly to see if I still could do one-day projects, but it's a lot of larger older stations were replaced with stuff like this. So
beautiful. What a piece of crap.
It's great. And of course, this is waiting. So like another one of the things is, with so many City Skyline series, you basically have to turn off the whole game, right?
Yes.
You turn off fires, you turn off police, you turn off as much crap as you want. And especially with older cities and things where we're limiting car traffic or trying to limit all this stuff, we wanted to make sure the city didn't seem dead, which means we're trying to work really hard on getting gameplay stuff to work nicely. So this station, while not specifically for Presidio Bay yet, is going to be one of the first. We're just waiting for some track networks to come out to have American-style low-level boarding. So instead of big, tall platforms where you just walk straight onto the train, you have to get up and walk into the train that way. Shading error is not great.
Have you guys thought of doing themes? Because those might ruin everything.
Scenes?
Themes.
Or the characters,
people,
yeah.
civilians.
We've wanted to. Unfortunately, it's a little hard for me. So that the skill set required to make Sims in this game is like the one part of 3D modeling that I'm especially bad at. So we are working. We're talking with people. We're trying to get stuff. So thankfully, a set of 1950s era Sims came out, which means like at least they won't have cell phones and things. So we won't quite get that 1910s and 20s look yet. But again, it's one of those things. So right now we're just pushing very, very hard to get the series out. But once we do, we're going back and taking the money from the Patreon and everything and investing it all back into commissions and things. So we might not have 1906 Sims for the earthquake, but we're hoping to be able to get a set of 1920s Sims made. We do have one guy. I have me, actually.
Yeah, because I have seen there has been a whole bunch of different Sims being uploaded to the workshop of different eras. I'm sure you've already checked it out.
Yeah, I saw Sven Berlin starting doing some themes, and also someone, I forgot the name because he's a new guy on the workshop. He's doing themes for Mars project, for CityWalks project, and they are like super, very modern, futuristic little themes, which are
Oh,
cool.
really?
Yeah, it's full. So on the workshop, I think now there are more than 10 new themes, futuristic and very
Oh, what?
good looking was. Yeah.
That's
I
great.
will. I will give you if you want a link to see them because I have them in the collection.
Look at that little guy.
So this for our cable car
Look at
is
that guy with
me,
his hat. His funny hat.
which is fun.
Is that you?
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
it's
it is you.
me.
It is you. Look at that.
Doesn't quite look right without textures. I haven't been a flat gray color in a long time, but
No.
and this is like, again, so much of this stuff. And one thing that's nice is like after we get this first set of stuff for Presidio Bay done, like they still use these cable cars in San Francisco. Like these are
Yeah.
done. These are good for 150 years of the series. Like they're not getting rid of these.
Yeah,
It's
but I
just
mean, like
done.
you say that, but I mean, I can imagine your thought process of going, oh, hey, wouldn't it be fantastic if we did a series starting from the beginning of this period of time and ending at present day, and then thinking, oh, there's this asset on the workshop, that'd be totally fine, easy, we can do that, we can pull it off, just have to make a couple of different assets, I guess, and then just snowballing into a 2-year process of
Really,
trying to
that's-
develop this up.
It's been a lot of it, but again, a lot of it's just like we came into this knowing, and the person I'm working with this on Interurban Era is a friend of mine from real life, and who's done some fantastic historic city skylines builds. But one of the thoughts was just like he's a professional scale modeler, so he does professional like model railroad builds for people, and like especially a lot of train stuff, which helps our interests overlap enormously. But he has this incredibly deep knowledge of history, and in fact, one of the people who we're working with is a PhD in architectural history, specifically for American cities, specifically for San Francisco. And in working with him, we've managed to create this big spreadsheet of like, here are the big gaps in history, and in buildings and California. It's like, we have, for City Skylines, we have, you know, the late 1800s, early 1900s, like Brooklyn collection and things like that. And then we just first got like some American traditional houses that are pretty good. They're not quite what we need and what we're looking for in terms of like they're slightly off scale. They're a little low, like fidelity. But we have nothing that's like first generation suburban like bungalows. It just doesn't exist. It goes straight from like dense downtown stuff for American themed things to modern big box stores and modern like suburban tract houses and things. There's nothing for like 1920s through 1980s.
I love how passionately you talk about how like that's a crime, but really like it's an absolute miracle and amazing that we even have assets that even are from like a variety of different dates on the workshop.
Oh, definitely,
to choose from.
definitely.
Like, isn't
It's
that just
not-
ridiculous?
It's not nothing. We don't have nothing,
Yeah,
but there's just this big gap, and like
yeah,
I'm a victim to this as well. If you look at my workshop page, there's like very little stuff. I'm sure you kind of had that problem in building the 80s, right?
yeah. Well,
We're
now
a little
I'm building.
better.
I'm building the 90s, and I'm lucky because that's not it's only like 20 years ago, so.
Yeah.
That's fine. 30 years ago, so it's fine to actually, because most of the architecture and there's a whole bunch of cars in the workshop that are all from the 90s, so that's easy enough. That's easy
Yeah,
enough. But I
90s
can't
can be
even
covered
imagine.
pretty nicely.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be really nice. Actually, I've already found all the assets to do it all, with all the vehicles and stuff, which is great. Let's get you guys all fixed up.
But yeah, it's just a big gap, and for me, always trying to build more realistic American cities and things, it's been like a lot of those are kind of the bones of which like we need. And seeing people try to do realistic American cities, it works, and you can. But I'm sure you guys who are experts of different things, Skib, I know that you're an absolute expert for like European stuff. I know you probably also see kind of there's this set of missing assets that just kind of don't exist, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I always find at least something that it's missing from the workshop. Always, even though people actually put out a lot of European assets, there are still lots of them missing. But yeah,
and it's especially it's like there's a lot of the boring stuff that's missed, right? You get an enormous variety of your beautiful signature like Parisian buildings.
Yeah,
But then nobody would do like a French style like suburban shop or like boring stuff. I'm having the same problem with like trains right now, where I end up having to make so many of our vehicles because people have made like the beautiful, perfectly restored Ford Model T, like a modern times one. But I need one that's like beat up and being used. Like I need the crappy van, not the beautifully restored weekend like little hobby runabout thing.
Yeah, I agree with you exactly. I mean, all those, for instance, if we talk about the Parisian ones, the made by Jez, and not only, I see that Lord Grooney and now someone from Japan or Asia, anyways, is doing some French buildings. It's cool, but some of them are very modern, some of them are quite old, but very well maintained. Maybe you barely find something that looks like a tiny bit more abandoned or very bad looking, because that's how actually they are, and especially in the suburbs where for which I don't know what I'm going to do when I have to go to the suburb area. I don't know what I'm going to plop there in the city.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same. Like we can make beautiful American, or maybe not beautiful, we can make like realistic old American downtowns with the amazing old, even if it's older, but like the amazing stuff from Feinbold and Darf, and we've got all these great like Art Deco towers and great things for like before World War II. And then we have modern buildings just because it's more global, so we can grab a modern skyscraper that's really built in Spain or really built in London or Japan or whatever, and like by and large it probably works. But there's that huge gap where we don't have like the first gen of like internationalist skyscrapers. And really a lot of what kind of stalled out Gramercy is that I moved back to New York and moved to Brooklyn, to the places I was building again, and I was like, I don't have the assets to make this look the way I want it to, because the Brooklyn pack is great. It just stops at like pre-war. And when I'm walking around every day and I see buildings like, and it's ones that would probably never get modeled, because we have buildings that used to be those beautiful pre-war ones that in New York in the 70s and 80s and even 90s, when it wasn't quite so nice, it became too expensive to keep the bricks looking nice. So they slapped cheap vinyl siding up the whole thing, and it looks like crap now. But like
Yeah.
I hate
that
fake
in the-
old.
that contrasting the beautiful old, like the now that it's popular and now that it's a nicer area again, like you need the crappy one, like the crappy 70s remodel next to the beautifully restored one to look right and to show the kind of character
Yes.
that I really want to be able to build. If everything is like nice and clean and restored and original, it kind of falls flat. So when I moved back, I did like a couple Gramercy kind of builds and looked in. I'm just like, I'd walk around, I'd take photos, be like, I'm going to recreate this street 1-to-1. And I'd be like, this building's good, this building's good. Oh, this building I can't do. Like, I can fudge it in with
Yeah.
something else, but like the crappier one that now has a frozen yogurt place in the bottom. Just, you know, I don't need to go that specific, but in the apartment, the ground floor apartment that's now hollowed out for a shop is the sort of thing that tells a lot of, like, that tells a story of the neighborhood. And it just
yeah,
doesn't
man.
exist.
Yeah.
That's so funny because I think we're so spoiled for the types of assets that are on the workshop. The fact that we can even, like, you know, there's so many, like, for instance, I've been like just slowly collecting assets for Sydney, and like there's a couple of guys on the workshop, asset creators, who are just creating like they're beautiful, they're like exactly the landmarks from Sydney. If I wanted to get all the buildings exactly how they look, I've got them, they're on the workshop. And then there's a lot of crossover with like American architecture that I can use, and someone's gone and created a whole bunch of like Australian terrace houses and bungalows, but there's still just a couple of buildings that I'm like, until they are on the workshop, then maybe I'll consider doing a Sydney build. But there's still a couple of things that are just like too Australian, and that's what stopped my Australian series in the first place. Is like it wasn't close enough. Like, it was close, but it just wasn't close enough.
Exactly.
Whereas I feel
It's
like,
what-
you know, building something like based in, you know, California, and even like, you know, Miami's an absolute stretch, but like the one based in California, at least there's enough of the type of architecture that I can sort of get the gist of. And that's sort of half the reason why I sort of like moved away from heavily, you know, downloading every asset that, you know, looks great, to now having a really stripped back, less
Yeah.
full collection.
And it's a great style. Like, I think it manages to work, but for what I'm trying to be able to do, which is like tell the story of how, you know, especially for Presidio Bay, where we need to have the original Victorian, and that sits
Dude,
there.
there's no way you could have vanilla assets in your project
Exactly.
at all.
But like,
Yeah.
even like a regular workshop asset, we end up having to commission or make a lot of these ourselves. We need to have a regular Victorian that will have a rundown version for the 60s, and then maybe a horrible modern remodel, or like a beautiful restoration, or, you know, one that's built and then the bottom floor, like the entrance area, gets turned into a garage for cars, which happens all the time. Or they put like, they turn a former open garage into a closed off garage, and like, that's the stories we're hoping, like, those are the stories for neighborhoods and things we're hoping to tell and hoping to be able to do. And seeing corner stores start off being little, like being an apartment, then it becomes a general store, then it becomes nothing for a while, then it becomes a, you know, a weird, like, sketchy cigarette, like, lottery ticket and cigarette, like, shop front. And then, of course, for San Francisco, because it's now just off the chart, like, rich for so many of these places, we see that in modern times get replaced with a tech startup or something like that. And that's the story. And, like, to be able to show that change with any existing assets, we either have to tear down the whole building. Like, we can never show kind of evolution in one building
So, I mean,
without...
it sounds like you've really got the structure and the idea of how each episode and the series is going to unfold. How far ahead are you? Or like, are you planning it like a regular City Skylines series? Are you going to be building? Is there going to be time lapses? Like, how's it going to unfold?
So, this is where we get to see how badly I'm wrong or not, because the first episode will be out. It's going to be the closest City Skyline series it'll be to is Franklin, obviously.
Yep.
which is much more story focused. It'll cut in, especially while we're still in times where photos are public domain. It'll cut in a lot of photos and plans and real life pictures and videography of things that survive or surviving elements of larger things, or like where you can see, like, here's a clue in modern Oakland, like this is where the trams, like the streetcars used to run, and you can tell because XYZ. Like, this street is uniquely wide, or like the buildings there disappear or become much more modern because that's where, you know, the yard was, and that was like, it's a 1920s neighborhood, but that's where the end of the line for the trams was, or the streetcars. And then when the streetcars were removed in the 60s, then they put up some 60s buildings there, and we'll be able to go there and show you with photos. So some of it will be a little bit time-lapsey, but the hope is to have that be just kind of like background underneath photos. Like, the builds are not necessarily the focus. Like, building out a new neighborhood is rarely going to be the focus, except when we get to times like suburbanization. Then, like, actually building a big tract of suburban houses is the focus, and then we can talk about, here's the layout. It's specifically designed to harm through traffic, and we can compare it to, you know, the 1920s era suburb that was designed around a streetcar line, or the 1890s like dense, nice downtown around the train stop. So, like, when things get built, it'll feel like a regular City Skyline series, but in normal, like, evolution of stuff, we're hoping it'll be able to be a little richer and more like a really good video essay.
Yes. So interesting. Are you hoping to potentially reach out to people outside of the City Skylines community and get sponsorships, or get like a different audience, or get picked up by any sort of companies or anything like that?
That would be incredible. Our kind of dream for it for a long time has been to create something good enough that it gets picked up by like local San Francisco newspapers and be like, this is an incredibly cool history of the entire Bay Area. And yeah, so like normal City Skylines community stuff, we want to be able to attract and engage as well, just because I also think like the more people can think critically about their cities and how they've changed, and be able to notice like areas where you see a small section of 1960s buildings in a 1920s neighborhood and be like, weird, like I can identify those and see them. I think that's great. That's our goal, is to get people to be able to realize those sorts of things, and to want to build them in their cities too, right? City Skylines does an incredibly bad job of promoting cities that feel realistic, right? We build realistic stuff, or more realistic stuff. We have to turn off so much of the game to be able to do that.
Yeah, and just the fact that we're building a city from scratch, you know, drag out a highway and plan where the downtown's going to sit, you know, like you really do have to plan it like Franklin, like Do Not Eat, you know, goes through the stages in history and how it really evolves over time. Yeah. But I mean, I guess that's always been my struggle with games like this, is that you are trying to plan for history as if it has grown, like developed in every the way it has.
And that's honestly so much of what stalled me out of Gramercy, is that like I was sitting here and planning Presidio Bay stuff, and then trying to figure out, it's like, okay, and again, as this like scope creep to make it feel more realistic and feel better. So as with like my assets, where it's like, here's a nice set and we can make a lot of stuff, like the next step of kind of getting that extra detail is like, how can we put this neighborhood and this beautiful little street corner scene, how can we put that in the context of a larger city? Where does this street corner take place that would make it feel nice? Like, how can we make it so that the micro level, we can have a really nice detailed street corner, and that fits when you look at the neighborhood and you're like, okay, that's why in this neighborhood, that's why you see 3 and 4 story buildings here, and then 2 stories further back, and then you zoom out even further. Like, the hope for Presidio Bay is that when we take a screenshot of the whole map, it'll feel more like Google Earth than anything else so far, just because it'll feel right. because when we get to the 60s, 70s, 80s, just like real life, we'll have train yards to demolish and replace with stuff from that era. We'll have, like, you know, former car factories that are now defunct and turned into other stuff. We'll have apple orchards turned into Apple Campus, like, for tech company stuff. And, like, you be damn sure eventually we will grab a bunch of remaining land and bulldoze it all and put Apple's big, like, Circle Campus in, and we'll talk about kind of the latest generation of tech campuses. And then especially because right now, and this is stuff I'm just interested in normally, but, like, the plans for that, Apple built this whole amazing thing, and it's like their kind of magnum opus is this incredible building. But meanwhile, you look at elsewhere in the Bay Area, and it's a really interesting thing, and hopefully we'll be able to have our take on it come out before we really see what it's going to be like. But other companies like Google are saying, actually, campuses and, like, single big buildings don't work. They're going back and they're trying to create a 1900s style neighborhood in the parking lots around the train station in central San Jose now. So they're building this thing and they're saying, here's what it's going to be. It's going to be mixed use. We're going to rent out shop fronts downstairs, and we're going to have a few floors of offices for us, and then we're going to have people, like, apartments that you can live in. And we're going to create this new, like, classic urbanism area, and you're going to be able to get on the light rail or the Caltrain up to San Francisco, or the Amtrak out to Oakland, and you'll be able to do all that. And kind of the contrast of those, and to be able to go back and be like, here's where we are in 2025. We're building to emulate the way this neighborhood was in 1925.
But look, I mean, that's not uncommon. Like, and that's not just cities that go, you know, this is how things were, and then progression happens, and then all of a sudden,
wait,
you know what? That was actually pretty good back then. We had it right. That light rail was perfect. The way that the shops interacted with the people that lived above the shops, that's like a perfect model. I don't know why we got rid of that in the first place. Like, that's normal. That's how humans work. But constantly, I feel like it's every 100 years we figure out that
it's
what we had before was way better. Yeah.
But one of the interesting things that we wanted to make sure of is it would be so easy to look at all of this through a modern lens. And when we get to the 1950s and 60s, we build the highways, and we're like, this was stupid. This was a bad idea. So we've done a lot of research so far. We've planned out and plotted out and collected notes for the entire series all the way up to the year about 2050 or so, which is how far it's going to run. It's going to be about 150 years. And we're going into the future in a slightly optimistic way, but it's going to be very interesting because a lot of important stuff in the Bay Area is super close to sea level.
Okay. So are you hoping to maybe potentially just build a wall around the ocean, or see some buildings underwater? Or maybe you might have to do a crossover with City Walk, City Wall, where you guys go to Mars.
Where you go to Mars. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to get there because, like, we wanted to stop at 2050 because that's when a lot of the currently planned mega projects are going to be, like, done and their effects are going to be included. So California is building a high-speed rail network, and, you know, it's delayed and over expensive and everything, but it's hopefully going to be finished, and it will reach San Francisco, and it will transform the area, and it'll transform the area around its stops. It'll transform the area around the improved regional rail nearby it. And that's going to be very interesting to see. But those effects won't shake out if we're just like, and we've hit 2020. Cut. We lose a lot of stories. So by kind of rounding things out to 2050, we can kind of show the effects of stuff we're doing now.
Yeah, cool.
That is, if the series gets fully out before 2050. But it's neat. And fingers it's exciting crossed to get to do. And
yeah, fingers crossed. It's so exciting. It's really, really, really exciting to hear something so different. And you guys are putting a lot of work into it as well. And I think, you know, it's going to be something that, I think people are going to really love to listen to it. Because I think that a lot of us, you know, the people who've been playing City Skylines for a while, you know, we started off just by being quite happy with just watching our cities grow by zoning and watching those vanilla buildings pop up. But you know, I think a lot of us have like taken the time and started to really appreciate cities from around the world and figure out architecture and planning, and you know, you can't help but feel that way when you're walking around the streets. You're somewhat taking it all in and wanted to change things in your own city that you're building.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. I mean,
I'm sure a lot of people are going to really appreciate it.
It's made me, according to my girlfriend at least, just insufferable walking around the city because I'm pointing out architecture buildings like, that's weird. Like, this is a suspicious like row of parking lots, as you can see, that runs many blocks until you see a suspiciously more modern building than the ones around it. Like, I wonder what that used to be. I can look it up and it's an old rail line or something, or...
Oh yeah, I've become a plaque reader. Like every time we walk past something with a bit of information on it, I'll stop and start reading it. Like, what are we doing? Like, what are you reading the history of that building? Like, oh, it's interesting. Don't want to know what's going on there.
And seeing, and so with New York City, we have these fantastic things where they took like Google Maps style aerials in 1920 and 1950 from like a hot air balloon or an airplane or something. So I love like looking back and standing, you know, underneath the big highway and then jumping in. And they have street view from those times as well. So like I can go and see like, wow, look, there's a beautiful building. It turns out the apartment building, there's an apartment building near me that used to be, it's a big new modern thing, and you know, it's providing a lot of housing. But it used to be this gorgeous theater that they tore down.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sad about that.
Yeah, okay, 100%.
But like,
yeah.
At the same time, to see this like 1920s movie palace survive all the way to the 2010s just to be torn down.
Yeah.
It's like, it's heartbreaking. But like, one of the things with Presidio Bay is like, we can look back on all of this and be like, man, it sure was stupid to build that big freeway right across the Embarcadero. Like, it sure is stupid to build all these big waterfront freeways, huh? But we really want to look at it from the thinking of that time, which has taken even more kind of learning and research. Because, like, we think about waterfronts in cities right now as generally being pretty nice, right? There's a lot of parks, there's a lot of access to the water, it's just kind of nice to be in. That's only been for the past like 20 or 30 years, because with container shipping, that's moved all the ports to elsewhere. So like the port of New York City, they used to have, you know, big burly men hauling crates out of boats, and now it's a big crane doing it in New Jersey.
Yes,
like,
and that's the case in a lot of cities. Like, it's still the case. You know, you don't want to live anywhere near the water because that's where the industry is. That's where the pollution is.
So to put up the giant double-decker freeway right on the water probably felt like the smartest idea in the world, right? You piss off the least amount of people. You can fit the whole highway out there. Like, everybody wants to drive now. And it helps, like, shippers get to and from the industry. And then, of course, immediately, like, the industry all moves away. And you end up with this beautiful land that you can reclaim for parks, you can reclaim for interesting stuff. And everyone's like, why do we have... Like, the water used to be polluted and garbage, and only recently has it cleaned up and been nice. And everybody's sitting around like, oh my god, look, all these cities have these big freeways cutting off their waterfront. That's so stupid. But at the time, it was the right idea. And that's, I think, it's going to be an interesting take to be. So you don't want to be like, man, everybody was always dumb, especially with regards to cars. Like, it made sense to do stuff then. We can now see it as hugely destructive. And in many cases, it made sense, but also was specifically tuned to be hugely destructive to certain minorities, which is a horrifying story we're going to tell. Like, it's an important part. We're going to tell that in episode 1. You've already seen it. They intentionally went. So they dynamited a bunch of houses to try to make a fire break. So they said, okay, everything inside this group, we're just going to let burn down. But we're going to make a gap that the fire can't jump over. Oops. They dynamited way more than they had to because they could blow up old Chinatown and things. And they're just like, that'll take care of it.
Wow.
And that sucks.
Yeah, I really can't wait to see that first episode. I mean, by the time we release this podcast, you guys all have been able to watch it. Skib and I are just sort of taking it all in. Hopefully, Jay will just give us a little sneaky preview or something after
Not
this.
while I'm
or
screen
something
sharing.
Unlisted. Wonderful. My friend, we do need to wrap up because it is almost 12 a.m. in $2 land, and I do need to hit the hay at some point.
Yeah, you're gonna have a lot of editing to do in this like feature-length recording session.
No way, I'll just keep most of it. Jay, man, thank you so much for joining us for our podcast. It's been a pleasure having you and talking about
Definitely.
San Francisco and your new series. It's gonna be great.
It's been great.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Can't wait to listen to this one day and just be horrified at how my own voice sounds and the dumb stuff I've been saying the whole time.
No worries about that. We've been there, all of us, but I think, well, you're not new to this. I mean, with your voice, hearing your voice or something.
True.
Especially now that you're doing this series and you have to probably... By the way, who is doing the narration? You or all of you?
It'll be both of us. So it'll be
Both of us.
me and Interurban Era, and we're actually bringing in some subject matter experts when the times come. When the time comes, which is nice.
Nice.
Just it happens to have a lot of benefits for having a lot of people on the team, including somebody with access to the UC Berkeley Architectural History Department.
Dear God, man. The amount of work that's gone into this.
For blueprints and plans, which if there are any modders listening out there, asset creators, they're like, oh my God, they got the blueprints for all these buildings.
Is that like hitting the lottery?
It's like hitting a lot. It's so much easier to make stuff when you have plans and blueprints. And unfortunately, our latest round of stuff, like the last few, have been like, "Ooh, sorry, we cannot provide quite as much as we'd hoped to because the libraries and things are closed."
Yes. Damn it.
Oh, yeah.
But,
Damn it. Hopefully not for too much longer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Jay, man, thank you so much for coming. Guys, you can support Presidio Bay on Patreon. They have basically like a Patreon page where you can support their work, and a lot of that money goes towards commissions for asset creators. And Jay, I mean, you know more about this. How can people support you guys?
Yeah, right now, support the project, patreon.com/Presidio Bay. I'm sure there'll be a link in the description. You guys will be good about that.
Man, I always forget to leave links in the description.
Okay,
Right.
well, if there's no link, shout at $2.20 in the comments for a link.
Yes.
But yeah, that's the best stuff so far, and the trend we're going to continue. Every penny in the Patreon has been put towards commissioning assets, we have a custom score for the theme. We had a very talented musician record us some fantastic scores, which of course, as with everything, we will update every season, which is going to be a blast. And like, again, one of those things where to go that extra mile, we couldn't just grab stock music because we wanted to have a similar score that evolves, which meant that we went, and it's just been fantastic. It's your support has gotten museum tickets for research, including one. We have a ferry boat that you can currently get right now on the Patreon if you subscribe to the early asset access, where there's I think like 20 or 30 assets for Turn of the Century series and beyond already made. But one of the boats, the big ferry boat that we commissioned, the Patreon helped support Interurban Era to actually go to where it's displayed on a museum and grab like all sorts of fantastic reference measurements, pictures, plans. Like it's just a huge help, and it's something we wouldn't be able to do without this sort of support. So thank you to you if you're already in the Patreon, but also please join. It makes our series better, and will make your cities better too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, man, we're gonna really love the work that you guys come up with. I'm really looking forward to seeing how it turns out. Guys, thank you all so much for watching. The next episode will be out in 2 weeks on Skib's channel. Skib, do you have any idea what people are going to be watching? What's going to be happening? Give us
At
a
this
taster.
point, we have no idea who is going to be on my next on my channel on the next podcast. But definitely, for now, it should be available as well as an early access on my Patreon account. But yeah, in 2 weeks, next Friday, actually not next Friday, it will be up there. We shall see. I'm also curious to see who it is.
Yeah, I'm curious to see who we might have to talk about that after this.
Yep, exactly.
Sounds good. All right, thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks, Jay.
Bye. See ya.
Bye.